everyone. Just a quick reminder to please not interfere with any of the presenter controls. And yeah, I think we'll get started. So good afternoon to everyone and all our attendees, and a special greeting to Professor Blumenthal. So Professor Ryan Blumenthal is a senior specialist forensic pathologist and associate professor at the University of Pretoria's Department of Forensic Medicine. His chief field of interest is pathology of trauma of lightning, pathology. He has published widely in the fields of electrocution, suicide, and other areas involving the pathology of trauma. Prof's chief mission in life is to help advance forensic pathology services both nationally and internationally. Prof has published over 29 articles in peer-reviewed journals and has contributed to 5 international textbooks. Prof is currently an NRF C2 rated scientist. His book, Autopsy, Life in the Trenches with a Forensic Pathologist from Africa, launched August 2020 and has become a non-fiction bestseller in South Africa. It is currently in its 3rd print and being translated to Russian. His 8-part documentary, Lightning Pathologist, aired 9th of November to the 20th of November 2020 on Channel 180 DSTV and was viewed by over 2.2 million people. Interests outside of forensic pathology, however, include sleight of hand magic, mountain biking, bird watching, and novel writing. Prof has a personal interest in innovative strategies and techniques in conflict resolution. He's a Sandparks honorary ranger, and for today's webinar, we have challenged him to share his insights on the current and future role of forensic pathology in conservation.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Kira. Just as I wrote it. Anyway, I am Professor Ryan Blumenthal, and today I have been tasked with discussing the role of forensic pathology in conservation. And I've been given a couple of weeks to prepare this. I hail from the University of Pretoria. This is where I currently work. And as mentioned, I am lightning pathologist, you know, it's my superhero after hours work, lightning pathologist, but this is me. And yeah, the film is currently showing as we talk right now on DSTV. So if I bore you, you can just switch on channel 180 and you can see me in real life on TV. But yeah, that was quite well received by the public, and we managed to share lightning safety and lightning information. And this picture was drawn by one of my students. So that's me in the field. And as Kira mentioned, so far it's been seen by about 2.2 million people on DSTV, and it's been wonderful. I've been contacted from all over South Africa with lightning stories. Folks, okay. Furthermore, I wrote a book called, by the way, you can go into lightningpathologist.com and read up on lightning, and there's even merchandise there. So then I wrote this book called Autopsy, which has been very well received, became a national bestseller, and it's now all over the world. Also being contacted around the world by people that have purchased this book, and it's been translated into Russian. And yeah, I've getting selfies from everyone and essays from people. I've even received a photo from a prisoner in CMAX prison with my book. So it managed to even make it into CMAX prison. Okay, so today I'm going to be giving an underground lecture on a first principle. This entire lecture will be based on one forensic principle. It is a master class. Please sit back, relax, leave your keyboards alone, and let me share with you an advanced forensic principle that will change your life. This I have never given before. This is the first time I'm going to be going so deep into this principle. I live with this principle day and night. I eat it, sleep it, dream it, breathe it. It is the most powerful forensic principle. It will affect your life. So sit back now, please, hands off your keyboards, and let us begin. So the story begins with my quails, all right? So this is where it begins. About 10 years ago, I was gifted some quails by a medical colleague of mine. However, I did not have sufficient quail protection in my backyard. So I released these 3 quails, and while they were there, I thought, let me quickly go buy some kind of protection for my quails, like a cage or something. When I arrived home, I saw that my quails were decimated. My neighbor's cat had killed and eaten my quails, and I was most devastated. So I went to my neighbor and I said, please, your cat has just killed my quails. And my neighbor looked at me and said, listen, I'm truly sorry to hear about your quails, but it is in the nature of cats to roam. Besides, how do you know it was my cat which killed your quails? I said, lady, I'm a forensic pathologist. Do not make me swab my quails, which I thought was quite humorous at the time. But anyway, I was quite upset by this, and I left sullen. The next day, I had to make sense of my new quailless life. So I got beautiful gardens at the University of Pretoria Medical Campus, and I decided to just walk on the grass and try and contemplate this new quailless life. Sounds idyllic, doesn't it? However, there's always downside to life, and no good deed goes unpunished. Because I sat on a bench under some trees, and as I stood up, the posterior aspect of my pants was stained with resin that had been dripping silently from the overhanging trees. My trousers were ruined. So day one, my quails killed. Next day, trousers ruined. And I thought, wait a minute. What do my quails and my trousers have in common? Locard's principle. This hit me like a ton of bricks, eh? Now let me explain the power of Locard's principle. So, but before we go to Locard based his principle on a guy by the name of Paul Kirk, and his original theory was the law of individualization. So he said any object in the universe is unique. So Paul Kirk's law said even if you got a hydrogen atom and another hydrogen atom, each hydrogen atom is unique. From Kirk's law came Locard's principle. By the way, Paul Kirk, he was a biochemist, criminalist, and participant in the Manhattan Project. He specialized in microscopy, an avid supporter of Locard's principle later, but it was upon his law that Locard based. So Locard was the pioneer in forensic science, and he was the Sherlock Holmes in Lyon, France. And he said that every contact leaves a trace, and that is the basis of the whole of forensics. So this is the original statement of Locard's principle as stated by Kirk. So he said wherever he steps, whatever he touches, whatever he leaves, even unconsciously, will serve as a silent witness against him. Not only his fingerprints or his footprints, but his hair, the fibers from his clothes, the glass he breaks, the tool marks he leaves, the paint he scratches, the blood or semen he deposits or collects, all of these and more bear mute witness against him. This is evidence that does not forget. It is not confused by the excitement of the moment. It is not absent because human witnesses are. It is factual evidence. Physical evidence cannot be wrong. It cannot perjure itself. It cannot be wholly absent. Only human failure to find it, study it, and understand it can diminish its value. So let me explain what this means in layman's language. If a perpetrator goes to a crime scene, they will leave something there or take something with them. So as you're sitting on your chair now, you will leave some hair on your chair, and your chair will put some fibers onto you. A classic example is a footprint in a garden. So please explain how your footprint was found outside in her garden. If we do an imprint, a negative imprint of your footprint in the grass, you must please explain to us as forensic people how your footprint got on the grass. So why is this important now for conservation? And how can we use these principles for conservation? And I want to show you how Locard's principle actually affects every single aspect of your life. So obviously, conservationists are very concerned about the processing of crime scenes and handing over evidence. But let us just show you how forensics works with Locard's principle. So I'm going to show you a Sherlock Holmesian approach to this. So if I find a dead body with a shoe imprint on the head, I must connect that shoe to that imprint abrasion on the head. And we've had plenty of cases. I've had a person drowned in a pool, and then I found an imprint abrasion on the head, and I can see this represents the tiles on the side of the pool. So obviously, this person must have hit their head on the tiles and then drowned. I've seen a horseshoe imprint on the head. I've seen an ashtray imprint on the head. But that means that the ashtray and the head came in contact. If I find an injury on the head, I must try and find the object that hit that head. All right. So we've seen horseshoes, ashtrays, shoes, etc. So too with tramline injuries. I mean, if I get someone in a mob assault hit with whipping injuries, I can tell you if the object that hit this person was a straight object or a bendy stick, all right? Because it will leave an imprint on the person. So if it's a bendy stick, it will follow the contour of the body. If it's a straight object, it will just hit on the side of the skin, but it leaves an imprint of itself on the body, and you can tell what the body's been hit with. If you look at the anatomy of a knife, you know, a knife will leave a very specific injury on, if you stab through a blazer, for example, we can link that knife going through the material and say that this knife went through that material using Locard's principle, because we can link it all up. So for example, this knife had a 1.1 millimeter tip break off. And then when we looked at the material defect, it had a 1.1 millimeter defect where that knife went through that material. So I just want you to quickly imagine for yourself, what if you stab someone with scissors, what do you think that injury will look like? Okay, just quickly draw on a piece of paper what you think a scissors stab wound would look like. And I can tell you now, you're probably all wrong. Scissors going through a piece of paper or through a person or through a jacket will look like one of these. So yeah, you've got to think in three-dimensionally, slow motion and backwards. But then if you ever see an injury like this on a person or through a leather jacket or something, you've got to think scissors injury. So now, you know, you need to understand that this principle, as powerful as it is, has limits, and you need to interpret it very cautiously. So, for example, you know, if there's evidence, does the presence of evidence equal evidence of presence? And if there's no evidence, does the absence of evidence equal evidence of absence? So if you see something, does that mean it was there? Right. So you get physical evidence and you get testimonial evidence. So you need to understand the limits of this principle. So you get, if something is not there, does that mean it's not there, or could it have been removed? And if something is there, does that mean that the perpetrator left it there, or could it have been planted there? And then if we get this evidence, we need to analyze it, compare it, evaluate, and verify it. And then obviously evidence needs to be presented correctly, and it can be tampered with. But let us go a step back over here. As I mentioned, you get testimonial evidence and physical evidence. Now, testimonial evidence, I have no comment, because if people are not lying all of the time, they're lying some of the time. If they're not lying some of the time, they're lying all of the time. If they're not lying some of the time or all of the time, they're telling you everything except the truth. And if they're not telling you everything except the truth, they're telling you what they believe to be the truth. So we take testimonial evidence as a pinch of salt. I'm only interested in physical evidence, because physical evidence cannot be wrong. You need to explain to me how your DNA got there. So what is physical evidence? Physical evidence is anything with a size, shape, dimension. It can be as large as a house or as small as a fiber. It can be as fleeting as an odor or as obvious as the scene of an explosion. So what human evidence is there? So on crime scenes or death scenes, we look for urine, spittle, saliva, feces, vomit, tissue, hair, dandruff, anything that can link the person to the scene. And physical evidence can prove that a crime has been committed. We can establish key elements of a crime, and we can place the suspect in contact with the victim at the scene. We can also try and help identify the identity of the person, and we can exonerate the innocent. Nowadays, we've got laboratories on a chip where if we find some blood on a scene, we can phenotype that blood and say that the owner of this blood has got blonde hair and blue eyes. And we can use this evidence, this physical evidence, to corroborate victims' testimony. And then we confront the suspect with this evidence, and we ask them, listen, explain. And court decisions are now based more on physical evidence than on testimonial evidence. Now, if you ever get to a death scene, you get one bite at the cherry. A homicide scene, a murder scene, you've got to do this correctly. You get one bite at the cherry. And I mean, this law of interchange, which I'm going to go deeply into now to show you how this will affect your very life, affects every aspect of your life. And if you start thinking in terms of the law of interchange, I mean, a single pubic hair will travel from your bathroom to your kitchen. Evidence moves. It's a living thing. It goes. So let me make you a bit neurotic here. On your eyelash right now, there is a little mite called Demodex follicularum. It is a typically small little mite on every human eye, and we've all got our own little population of Demodex. Now, we use Demodex. By the way, this is Demodex. So on your eyelids, if you look under a very big microscope, you'll see little Demodex there. They live in the hair follicles, okay? This is what one looks like under a microscope. They are fascinating little insects, but you and your partner share Demodex population. If you've got a 50% Demodex population sharing, then that means that the two of you have come in contact. So we can catch like a rapist off their Demodex. This is all off Locard's principle. That's your eyelash. Let's go further. A wedding guest. I mean, from the days BC before COVID, I was reminded of a female wedding guest that was wearing glitter makeup. By the end of the wedding, I watched this go down. Everyone had glitter makeup on them. It shone up like a 1970s discotheque. I mean, that is glitter makeup. Every single person who she hugged and moved through that wedding scene with was like Locard principle on steroids. Every single person at the end of the wedding had glitter on them, on their hands, on their faces, on their clothing. As a forensic pathologist, I witnessed this go down. And then I started thinking to myself, wait a minute, what about other chemicals? Well, these two must be transferred. It must be wild out there. And obviously, chemicals end up being swallowed. So sometimes you wonder how people get sick. So everything keeps moving and is living and is transferring. Even infectious diseases. Let's just talk COVID, HIV here. I mean, we're all experts now, but it also transfers through Locard's principle. So you don't just get sick, you come in contact through interchange with someone that was sick, that left it on a foam mat, an object, and then you picked it up. And then we can tell you how you got this. So HIV/AIDS, you can work out the law of interchange with HIV/AIDS, but even COVID, like we can tell you that you got it from the person lying next to you in the hospital and not from the person delivering your pizza based on its genotype. So we can actually follow diseases through Locard's principle. Even toxicology. And folks, stay with me here because I'm getting to conservation now. I'm just showing you basic first principles here. The entire field of toxicology follows Locard's principle. You come in contact with a poison or a toxin or a venom. If an animal dies with a toxin or a venom, you apply Locard's principle. Occupational health and safety is Locard's principle. We as forensic personnel and you as vets are going to encounter scenes that may be dangerous to your health. I've been to scenes that are fatal and very dangerous to forensic pathologists. I mean, think to yourself of me walking into a flat in Sunnyside where someone has died of tuberculosis. That flat has got aerosolized Mycobacterium tuberculosis floating around in that scene as I get in there. And how am I going to get sick? Through Locard's principle. Even non-kinetic injury follows Locard's principle. So you don't just get sick from radiation or microwaves or gamma rays or ultrasound. You need to be exposed to them or indirectly to them to get sick. Even data and information follows Locard's principles. So even thoughts and ideas transfer. Reading and listening to me here is transferring data to your mind. True information is exchanged from person to person. False information is exchanged from person to person. Even relationships follow Locard's principles. Okay, sit back here, leave your keyboards alone and listen to me. Locard's principle can save relationships and ruin relationships. So if you're a forensic mindseted person, you can detect extramarital affairs through Locard's principle. You can pick up traces of perfume, aftershave, makeup, or lipstick on your partner. So this you will detect before they've even mentioned to you that they're having an extramarital affair. If you study and know Locard, you'll be able to detect extramarital affairs. And relationships can be saved by Locard's principle, because here's a game you can go home and play tonight. If you listen to my lecture carefully enough, you can go home and recreate your partner's movements through your house or your flat or your apartment. If you know Locard enough, you'll be able to tell you where he or she sat, what they ate, what they did, and maybe even what they're into. Excuse me for that, but that's Locard's principle. So from my autopsy table, you can see how powerful Locard is. You can tell what's happening in the world even without me going outside the mortuary. I can tell you from my mortuary if a new gang has moved into my neighborhood. I can tell you if there's a new and emergent disease. I can tell you the health of the nation, physical, mental, psychological. And I can tell you this without even venturing outdoors. I see myself as a type of panel beater, like a human panel beater. So even though a panel beater is not at the accident, the panel beater will have an idea of what happened at the accident. And it's the same kind of thought process that we have in the mortuary. We get the damaged vehicle and we can tell you that this was blunt force trauma and not boiling water, for example. So, for example, it was a forensic pathologist who first discovered that power car windows are deadly. So it was a forensic pathologist. It was a 26-month-old girl. She was asphyxiated by her car power window. The forensic pathologist highlighted this unrecognized hazard. So she was leaning out the window and her knee touched the button that pushes the window, the automatic window up, and she died of asphyxia. And nowadays, all cars have a cutout safety mechanism, because if a part of the body is stuck in between the car window and the door frame, it will cut out. So what is forensic pathology? Sorry, I'm going ahead of, it's that branch of medicine that applies the principles and knowledge of the medical sciences to the problems in the fields of the law. What do? We identify cause and manner of death. We identify the deceased if unknown. We collect evidence from the body. We document injuries or the lack of them. We deduce how injuries occurred. We document underlying natural disease. We attend scenes of crime. We determine or exclude other causes of death, and we provide expert testimony. So now, how does this background introduction apply to conservation? Because that's my background. This first principle that I've discussed with you now, we're going to teach you how to use in conservation. So let us begin at the very beginning. Even the ancient art of tracking animals and poachers is nothing more than a practical application of Locard's principle. If you hang out with a grizzled old tracker, they'll be able to tell you everything. The entire wildlife guiding, tracking, and hunting industry has been built off Locard's principle. A master tracker will read the wilderness like a newspaper. The master tracker will be able to tell you where the animal walked, how long ago the animal walked there, whether it was male or female, or if the female was pregnant or not. Every contact leaves a trace. Every animal and human leaves a trace. Tracking and anti-tracking techniques puts this theory into practice. And remember, conservationists always keep first principles in mind. And then we can go further into the processing of the scene and the handing over of evidence. But now you need to see that there's a need for forensic expertise in the veterinary arena. We've got great investments in the veterinary world than ever before in history. So are these skills that I have in the human mortuary, are they transferable to the veterinary disciplines? If so, what is the path forward? Are there ethics involved here? And is veterinary forensic pathology even like a mainstream field now, or should it be? So let us look at some scenarios here. I'm going to just pump you guys with some information of forensically significant cases. Recently, Johann Rupert, the billionaire, he bought a Cape buffalo called Mystery for a record 40 million rand. This singular example shows what's at stake in the veterinary world. With species being insured at such exorbitant amounts, the forensic bar appears to be higher than ever. Because you can imagine, if that animal dies, I mean, is this fraud? Is this real? You know, the insurance must be massive, and you need a thorough investigation here. So then it's a Mystery. That was the buffalo. It was touted as something special with an all-in-one package, a black facial mask, horns, a large masculine body, and an attitude of note. It was touted as a blue blood, thoroughbred of pure genetic dynamite, said the auction catalog. A must-have for any serious breeder. Measured 1.34 meters at the shoulders. We thought that was a record. And then what happens? Another buffalo comes along called Horizon. I think this was bought by Cyril Ramaphosa for 176 million rand on February the 15th, 2016. It was the biggest horned and disease-free buffalo. It was valued at $2.8 million. And it surpassed Mystery. And you can imagine, if this thing dies, do you want to be the vet that does that autopsy? Can you imagine the pressure that you're going to experience doing that autopsy? You know. And then obviously there's other scenarios where forensics is involved. Rhino poaching. Everyone knows about rhino poaching. Thousands of these animals have been decimated in the past few years. Stock theft, another region where forensics can come to the fore. Poisoned pets remains a heavy burden on pet owners, and pets are not like family. They are family to some people. It's all they have. And when their pet dies, it's like losing a human brother or sister or lover. I mean, that's the kind of emotion that's involved there, and they want a thorough forensic investigation as to why their dog died. Then there's the illegal pet trade. anything and everything is smuggled and on this planet. So we need forensics to help catch these bad guys. And then you get unexpected deaths of animals that will always need a forensic approach, such as the crocodile deaths in the Kruger National Park. And remember, always keep first principles at play here, Locard's principle. These animals don't just die. They come in contact with a venom or a toxin or poison or something. So you've got to think like Sherlock Holmes here. And then there's other case scenarios, specifically in South Africa, that's for conservation. So as an honorary ranger, I mean, these are the topics that sprung to mind. Pangolin, rhino, elephant, lions, that the bones go to the Eastern markets. Leopards go for traditional robes. Antelope, cane rats, the illegal bush meat market. Seahorses are loved by the Eastern market. Paralamun and abalone, used in local traditional medicine. Snakes, specifically the southern adder and baboon spiders, are used in the exotic pet trade. Cycads and conophytum succulents. These things are all being smuggled and illegally and illicitly through the world. And then there's cases that evoke serious emotion. I mean, do you remember this case where the giraffe was killed on the N1 bridge? You know, this case must be followed up, and people must be fined and jailed, and justice must be seen to be done. So we need the forensic data to back this up. Now I'm going into mass deaths, so stay with me now. I'm going to show you some photos that I've tracked down of mass deaths of animals, mainly due to lightning. There was one now that happened on the 9th of August. This was several days ago. I don't know if any of you heard about this. It was a lightning strike in the Ninotsminda region in southern Georgia. The incident took place on the 9th of August. There were 1,500 sheep grazing on a pasture, and it was located about 5 kilometers from the Tamvuka village. But basically, 500 sheep were dead. And there's other cases, there's 173 dead in China, 500 sheep dead in Georgia, 500 sheep dead in Nepal. And the biggest in history that I managed to track down is in 1939, 835 sheep in Utah. So as a forensic pathologist and as lightning pathologist, the big question people ask me, is this due to a single lightning strike or due to multiple strikes around the area? Did they die all at once, or did little herds die as lightning struck due to the fourth mechanism? So there's forensics that needs to be done, but this is mass deaths of animals. A singular case that I was involved with that was on Lightning Pathologist happened on the 12th of January 2012 between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning. 2 bongos. Now, for those that don't know, bongos are Trachylophus species of antelope, critically endangered. And we went to the Pretoria Zoo. Dr. Adrian Tordorf was the pathologist in charge. That's where lightning struck the tree in that enclosure. And this was the tree that was struck. And we could see that the lightning came down the tree, left signs, forensic evidence of Locard's principle on the tree. And that alerted us as to why these antelope died. And there's a plume of froth at the nostrils of the one bongo, which told me forensically that this was not an immediate death, because there was some terminal respiration, which caused the alveolar-rich protein exudate of the lungs to seep out, and then the inspiration and the expiration whipped it up like egg meringue at the nostril. So this was not a totally instantaneous death. There must have been some inspiration and expiration, which caused the plume of froth at the nostrils. You can see that the one horn was about 5 centimeters submerged in the soil, and they died due to what's known as the fourth mechanism, which is where lightning is injected into the ground and it travels like ripples through the surface of the soil, and then the one leg's at a different potential difference from another leg. And because animals are quadrupeds, they've got a heart between their legs, and this is why whole herds of animals will be decimated by lightning strike. Okay. And then I was involved with Tigris Productions. This was seen by 21 million people, by the way. You can find it. It's called Elephant Graveyard. But there were 5 elephants in India that were struck by lightning, and one was pregnant. And what was fascinating is in India, these are gods to the people, and the villagers wanted to kill the park owners. They said that their gods were not protected. And we worked out that they were actually killed by lightning and that the park owners were actually innocent. This scene happened in Reismeersbult se wêreld near Ventersdorp. This tree was struck, and you can see at the base of the tree there were 189 dead kestrels. These came to Onderstepoort, so that's Professor Zephany Burnett, and you know, the birds actually showed very little injuries. But if you look at the feathers under infrared light, Locard's principle once again, you'll see singeing of the feathers. So even though there may be no macroscopic signs on the birds, if you look at it under different light sources, you may find signs of lightning on the birds. So always think in terms of first principles. So critically endangered species definitely need lightning protection plans. And then we need plans, you know, for other, you know, critically endangered species also, not just lightning protection plans. So which brings me now to the conclusion of my talk for the evening. There's the green scorpions, okay? You need to know about them. They are very good when it comes to conservation and forensics. Please Google Operation Blizzard and Operation Thunderball. And if you want to read their report, you can read the 2019 to 2020 National Environmental Compliance and Enforcement Report. And they netted successful seizures in illicit reptile, rhino, and cycad trade. And they even, like, you know, looked at Eskom and Sasol. They inspected, you know, 5445 facilities between 2019 and 2020. And then between 2018 and 2019, they inspected 4530 facilities, and they looked at the entire waste and pollution sector. So they even made comments about COVID and the environment. So from a conservation point of view, they said that fewer rhinos were poached during the lockdown, but maybe because there were less rhinos to poach, so we don't know about that. They said there was a sharp incline in illegal dog hunting. They said that during COVID, there was mass invasions on protected forests and deforestation, and they saw healthcare risk wastage from response to COVID-19. Incidentally, as a forensic pathologist, I also saw different trends during COVID lockdown. For example, I saw a lot of suicides, you know, for mental health issues. I saw a lot of interpersonal violence because people were in lockdown with nowhere to run away from their partners, nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. So there's a lot of interpersonal violence. I saw a lot of addict-related stuff because people were not getting their fixes, so they were making their own home brews of alcohol, etc., and dying because of methanol poisoning, etc. And sadly and tragically, I saw a lot of decomposed and skeletons of humans because no one was finding all these lonely people. So COVID affected everything. Even it affected our bird species. You know, birds moved into areas where they never were, and they moved out of areas, you know, and also the sound of birds also changed due to COVID because of noise pollution that went down. So they said that birds started singing, you know, softer than normal because there was less noise. So you've got to have a forensic mindset when you analyze life and animals and science. So if you ever have a case in your veterinary practice that you think is of conservational significance, then you can send an email to environment@tipsoffice.com or phone the anonymous hotline, and they work in conjunction with the SAPS and the National Prosecuting Authority. Okay, but you know, I've shown you how to think about this off basic principles. So, folks, in closing, I've identified a need. There's definitely a need. We need interdisciplinary cooperation. We take everything on a case-to-case basis. Our doors are open as forensic pathologists for ad hoc consultations. I mean, as a human forensic pathologist, I've done a surprising amount of animal-related stuff. In my 20-year career, I've worked on wild dogs, sheep, cattle, whooping cranes, wild dogs, dogs, cat, you name it. And I mean, I'm a human forensic pathologist. So just in closing, and then I'll open the floor to some questions. Stick to first principle thinking. Every contact leaves a trace. Locard's principle, Locard's principle, Locard's principle. So folks, on that note, I thank you for your time here. Thank you very much. I'll open the floor to questions, comments, or criticism.
Okay, so I guess there aren't really much questions. Hi everyone, I'm Chris. I am the IVSA chairperson. Prof. Blumenthal, I just want to say thank you very much on behalf of the Wildlife Committee, the IVSA South Africa, and everyone else that attended tonight. I got to say this was one of the most interesting talks and webinars I've ever attended, and I can say that, well, I learned something new. Everyone else probably also learned something new from this. We really appreciate your time, and yeah, I think this is an up-and-coming field in veterinary sciences, and we definitely need our medical colleagues' experience and all the knowledge that they have in order for the veterinary conservation of forensic pathology to actually become something incredible in the near future. Prof. Blumenthal, thank you once again. I encourage all of you to go watch the documentary on DSTV called The Lightning Pathologist. And then also, I just want to thank the sponsors, Submoc, Alien May, Hills, and Down to the Wire. If there's any other questions, Prof, feel free to answer them. Otherwise, thank you, everyone, and enjoy your evening.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, please track down the book Autopsy. There's a lot of pearls in that book, and this is not shameless self-promotion. Please, there's good stuff in there that can be applied to veterinary.
Hi, Prof. From my side, thank you so much. That was so interesting. I think, as you say, there's such potential for interdisciplinary collaboration, and hopefully you've inspired a whole generation of veterinary pathologists, forensic pathologists. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.